Hello my friends and fellow VEDSies, and welcome to day number 11. Now, in this musical month of mine, I have been doing my best to balance between stuff that I can reasonably expect the average person to know versus my more niche interests, which is tricky, because so much of what I listen to is just musical theater. And that's hard to talk about because there's so much context surrounding songs from musicals, both in the storytelling sense and that from production to production and performance to performance, the amorphous nature of theater ensures that we will always face a certain degree of challenges when trying to talk about a show. But will that stop me from trying? No. You see, rather than talking about individual songs or performances, I want to talk about some of my absolute favorite musicals. How and when I saw them, what I love about them, how they've made an impact over the years. There's 15 of them, but this isn't so much of a ranking as it is just a list of 15 great musicals. With all that explained, places? A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. So back when I actually watched the Tonys, I remember seeing this absolutely incredible performance of I've Decided to Marry You. It was funny, the song was catchy, the costumes were gorgeous, the whole thing was introduced with a great quick change bit, and they ended up winning 4 awards that night. Best Musical, Best Book of a Musical, Best Direction of a Musical, and Best Costume Design, and I was fascinated. So of course when the national tour came through, I had to go and see it. For everybody who's not in the know, A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder tells the story of Monty Navarro, a gentleman who discovers his relationship to the colorfully kooky Dysquith family who disowned his mother, and that he is in fact 9th in line for the earldom. We follow Monty as he murders his way through the family while trying to decide between the pure innocent Phoebe and the fabulous Sabella. It's delightfully wacky and morbid. Honestly, not tonally dissimilar from Pushing Daisies, but with an Edwardian Gothic sort of aesthetic. So yeah, it was kind of tailor-made for me. Aesthetically, tonally, musically, really in every sense. Wonderland. I don't know what it was about the early 2010s and Alice in Wonderland, but this reimagining was easily my favorite of the bunch. Sorry, Looking Glass Wars. I discovered this musical because Carly Rose Sonnenclair, who plays Alice's daughter Chloe, also played Gilda Flip on The Electric Company. So I looked it up and found the entire production posted on YouTube. Thank God it was. No, seriously, thank God it was. This thing only lasted 1 month on Broadway, so there's very little in the way of photos, videos. Hell, without the bootlegs, we wouldn't have a recording of the opening number. And losing this production would be a genuine loss. Because while the book obviously has some issues, there is so much good going on here in regards to every other aspect of the show. Gorgeous inventive costumes, fun set pieces, energetic music and choreography, and infinitely likable characters. To the point that I end up not caring about the issues with the story. To me, it's sort of like Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Sure, you can pick apart that there's not much of a story and half of the songs are in different genres, but if you just accept the wild ride you're on, you're gonna have a lot of fun. Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Speaking of Joseph, I really do love this show. In fact, it's the only show that I've done twice. Once my freshman year of high school and once in college at a local community theater. When I was really little, we watched our VHS of the film version with Donny Osmond quite a bit because my mom thought he was cute. And so it was always sort of there in the background, and then I got to do it. And then right after our production in high school, the national tour came through town, so our principal actually got us tickets to go see the show on my 15th birthday. So it goes without saying that Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat has a really special place in my heart. And sure, it's an easy show to make fun of, and believe me, I do it too. But I think there's a really strong argument to be made for silliness for the sake of silliness if it's well done. This show isn't deep, and it doesn't really pretend to be, it's just a good time. Be more chill. Listen, I have no shame, cringe is dead, and I fucking love Be More Chill. It's a Disney Channel original movie where they say fuck, what's not to like? Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Be More Chill tells the story of awkward high schooler Jeremy who desperately wants to feel confident in his chaotic high school mood. He learns about the Squip, a supercomputer that you take as a pill, and it teaches you how to be cool. He takes it, but the Squip turns out to be a sinister force that wants to take over the school, and it's up to Jeremy and his best friend Michael to save everyone. So yeah, it's a decom plot. And as someone who grew up on those sorts of cheesy teen movies, this feels like the natural progression of this type of story. You know, we grew up with High School Musical, Sky High, and Pixel Perfect, so of course as we got older, we'd want to see a version where the characters drink and make out and again say fuck. And the characters are likable, and the premise is fun, and the music is so catchy. And I've definitely said this before, this VEDS, but the week that I got to work on this show at Playhouse Square was one of the best of my life, and I really love it. 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Guys, I want to hug these kids so bad. I know, right? What a surprise. Who would have guessed that the bitch who's played 2 years in a sad teen-themed D&D campaign would get emo over the sad teen musical? Now, there are a lot of musicals about sad kids and sad teens, and a lot of them are really, really good. But I think there are a few things that make 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee really stand out. One is that it isn't just one sad kid, it's a whole ensemble made up of kids with totally different circumstances and problems that manifest in a variety of different ways. Another factor is that these kids really act like kids. They curse and have angst and are tragic, but they're also goofy and sweet and trying their best. They're very lovable, adding great comedy, wonderful music, and the audience participation aspect of the show, and oh my god. Also the I Love You song, holy shit. Little Shop of Horrors. I'm pretty sure that I've seen Little Shop more than any other show. I saw 5 productions over the course of 1 year. And yeah, that's pretty extreme, but can you blame me? It's funny, it's scary, it's sincere, it's satirical, it's Faustian, there's puppets. What more could you want?
Hey guys, editing Tessa here. I got so caught up in doing my bit that I forgot to say that this musical is Dear Evan Hansen. Sorry about that.
This is stupid fucking bit. And I ruined my makeup for it. Twisted, Life and Times of a Royal Vizier. It does feel a bit weird to be including a Star Kid show on this list, but it really does belong on here. In terms of concepts for a musical, I guess Wicked, but It's Jafar isn't that crazy, but the degree to which it works is simply astounding. It's so obvious that the people working on the show love Aladdin and Disney in general, because this is really the sort of parody that can only be achieved through loving the source material. When they want you to laugh, you are laughing, and when they want you to cry, I am sobbing. There's an incredible video essay by Sylvana Limited that discusses how successful the writing of this show is through the lens of Sondheim's principles for effective songwriting that I highly recommend if you're curious, because it really highlights the absolute brilliance that is this show. 1776. Okay, my friends and fellow VEDSies, I feel like I ramble on about how much I love this musical all the fucking time, but somehow people are always surprised when I mention it as one of my all-time favorite musicals. 1776 is the only musical on this list I haven't seen or worked on. However, I own the script, I own the original Broadway cast soundtrack, and I watch the movie every 4th of July. Extremely faithful adaptation, by the way. But it's still such a moving work of art that I couldn't not include it on this list. I think what makes 1776 so impactful, or at least part of it, is how the musical doesn't necessarily pass judgment on the Founding Fathers so much as present them, the situation they were faced with, and show how they responded. And that's not to say that they don't have pathos, but the narrative is never really 100% on their side. We understand why they're focused on the big picture and why they make the compromises that they do, but the narrative never really hand-waves it all away. We have to reckon with all of this as the history of the United States. And that, on top of fabulous writing and music, make for a show unlike any other that I've ever seen. Into the Woods. Do I have to explain this one? I mean, it's Into the Woods. I feel like this one kind of goes without saying. I remember hearing about Into the Woods as one of the greatest musicals of all time, and so when the movie came out, I was excited to finally get to experience it. And yeah, that was a really moving night for me, and I ended up crying quite a bit. But I didn't realize how much I would grow to love this show when I finally got to see a stage production, like 4 years later. And ever since, I've always kept my eyes out for productions of Into the Woods, either to audition for or to simply watch. And when Baldwin Wallace put on a production my final semester, you know I was working costumes on that shit. So yeah, when I say I love Into the Woods, I love Into the Woods. It's funny and intelligent and chock full of creative ideas regarding the adapting and weaving together of these various fairy tales. And of course it's brilliant. I mean, it's Sondheim. But I think what gets to me the most are the themes of actions having consequences, the relationships between parents and children, growing up, how things are never as black and white as we'd like them to be. There's so many universal experiences layered into this story beneath the facade of a fairy tale, and I think anyone who's willing to watch and listen will be able to be moved by some aspect of the show. Dogfight. Okay. Promise that's the last time I'm using that joke in this video. But I was entirely justified in using it one last time because Dogfight turns me into a puddle of tears. And though this never made it to Broadway, this show is absolutely incredible. Dogfight tells the story of Eddie Birdlace, a recently discharged Marine, as he heads back to San Francisco, which is where he and his friends spent their last night stateside before heading off to Vietnam. He reminisces about the night and the girl he met, a shy waitress named Rose, who he originally was interested in for the sake of a contest where each Marine tried to bring the ugliest date for a party to win a pot of money, but eventually they developed a genuine connection that night before he ships off. I originally learned about this show because my friend liked to sing the Eddie songs, especially Come to a Party, which meant he needed a rose. And I really loved those songs, so I sought out a bootleg of the original production and really, truly fell in love. Stories about the realities of war versus what we're led to believe war is actually like is a theme that always hits home for me, and that's a central element of this show. You constantly see how these young men have been filled with ideas of how they'll be heroes, and so when we see how that ends up going for them, it's raw and brutal, and even though we don't like most of them, we certainly don't think they deserve what happens to them. And Rose. She's this intensely sympathetic, empathetic character who's kind and unsure and wants to see the best in people, and I absolutely love her. Total dream role. I've sung all of her solos in various classes and auditions because I love them all so much. It's such a beautiful, bittersweet musical that always shakes me to my core in the best way possible. Les Miserables! Les Mis was another one of those shows that I had heard about from people as one of the greats. And luckily, only a couple years before I had started exploring the world of modern musical theater, the 25th anniversary concert had happened, so I was able to find that. And watching that, I fell in love with both the music and several members of the cast. But admittedly, the show didn't really have its full impact in that context. It's a very confusing show if you're not already familiar with it, and the concert setting did not help with that. But I absolutely loved the music and was super excited for the movie. And yeah, seeing the story in a more solid sense was incredible and made me sob so badly that after the movie, my eyes were so blurry from tears that I actually tripped up the stairs and bruised my rib on the lights. I wish I was kidding. I think that what gets me about Les Mis, which is true of a lot of my favorite pieces of media, is that no matter how dark things get, there is hope and light, and the kindness and love mattered in the end. The Band's Visit. By the time The Band's Visit swept with its 11 nominations and 10 wins, I wasn't really paying attention to the Tonys anymore. And as the drama unfolded, as drama always does when a production sweeps the Tonys, I wondered how this musical I'd never heard of before, starring Tony Shalhoub, had managed such a feat. So when the national tour came to town and school was offering $10 tickets that included a pre-show talk with the producer and some members of the cast, I had to know what was going on. I had no idea what I was in for. The premise of the band's visit is deceptively simple. An Egyptian band is supposed to play in Israel and accidentally end up in a tiny town in the middle of nowhere where they and the people living there spend a night together before the band leaves in the morning. That's nothing. It's a bunch of people making small talk. And yet, when I tell you that the show was transcendental, the music, the lyrics, everything about this makes me feel a million things all at the same time. Next to normal. If everything I've already talked about didn't make it apparent, I love things that are tragic and yet hopeful, and Next to Normal really epitomizes that. It follows the Goodman family as Mother Diana's mental illness threatens to tear the family apart. It's raw and angry and honest and doesn't pull any punches while still being able to be sincere and hopeful. And as you can imagine, finding this musical as a depressed high schooler constantly on the verge of a breakdown was like finding religion. It let me wallow in how unfair my life was while also forcing me to reckon with the fact that my actions have consequences, while also assuring me that no matter how dark things seem, there will be light. There's such an incredible catharsis to be found here, and given that that's one of the most important aspects of storytelling to me, it's no surprise that I still love this musical as much as I do. The Secret Garden. So, I first heard about this musical through books versus movies versus musicals, and everything about it sounded absolutely fascinating. But I was kind of young, and there weren't really any opportunities for me to go see it, so I really just only ever listened to Lily's Eyes and Wick. That is, until my junior year of high school when it was announced that we would be putting it on. I was already so stoked, and then I began to do my research and fell more and more in love with the music and the story. And then getting to be a part of that show and work on it and pick apart the minute details that make it work. Oh my god. Every song is so beautiful, every character is so compelling, the theme of grief will always be relevant, and it is one of my absolute favorites. Oh my god, this is going to be a long ass video. I'm sorry in advance. I've already had to delete so much just to have storage space for this, but when you love something, or 15 somethings, it's hard to be brief, especially when you're already incapable of brevity as it is. But yes, those are some of my absolute all-time favorite musicals. I think there's definitely certain patterns to be observed here, and I hope this gives you guys some insight into the types of musicals that are nearest and dearest to my heart. But what about you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Alright, my friends and fellow VEDSies, I will see you tomorrow.